So welcome to the Node.js Next 10 meeting for June 21st, 2023. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the agenda and going through the issues that were tagged there. Before we do that, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? Okay, so no announcements this week. So let's look at the first one, which is the Next 10 Collaboration Summit Technical Priorities. I think that one we need to, we haven't done anything we need to follow on from the board. But neither Jean nor I have done that yet. No progress. The Next 10 serverless deep dive, that is actually scheduled for tomorrow. I guess a little bit of what would be worth discussing is just whether we've got enough attendees sort of on the in the loop. And I know, Ethan, we were discussing like doing a tweet and getting that out. So that's good. Any other ideas in terms of making sure we get the right people there?
I don't have any other ideas for attendance other than maybe starting that earlier, doing direct reach outs and stuff.
Yeah.
Even if it's as like broad as just like publicly tweeting, hey, at Cloudflare, who can we talk to for this? And obviously I think we're a little too late for that now. But that leads me into another question, which is like, if we show up tomorrow, what is our like minimum amount of attendance? And I don't think it's going to be a problem if we have to cancel it. If people show up, like the worst case, people get 2 hours or whatever time back on their calendars. But like just expectations going in, what's our threshold?
It's a good question. I think as long as we have, even in the 3 or 4 people from different areas, we can at least start with a discussion. If it's just a couple of us, like say 2 people, maybe that's not quite enough, but I don't know. I don't have a really good hard and fast way to figure that one out ahead of time. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that front.
Not directly. I think that's a great answer though. Like if there's only like 2 companies there, it might not be worth spending all the time and effort and instead focusing on a reschedule or something. But if there's at least 3 companies represented, then that might be enough of a sounding board to have a preliminary discussion, and then we can always follow up if there is deemed more interest.
Yeah.
Part of this might just be classic, like all of these companies care, but not enough to like show up and voice their opinion. So like with that, we can, not necessarily like run away with it and do whatever we want, but like we could do some of the work just with whoever shows up and then represent that more publicly and say, hey, how does everyone feel about this? And if everyone's like, okay, then cool. We've done our job.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where if we can get enough people to have a good discussion of like, is there anything that the project needs to prioritize? Or is everything just great? Like anybody who's running, Node and serverless, it's like, no, well, we don't have any problems. And that's one reason why, like, if people aren't feeling any pain, then they're not motivated to come and talk about fixing that lack of pain, right? So
yeah, exactly.
I think if we have a discussion, we can't come up with anything that the project really needs to do in the context of serverless, then it's like, okay, well, we thought about it. Doesn't seem to be anything right now. So really the priority should be on other things where there is some pain, right?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll get a good discussion. And even if the answer is like, hey, we got together and we can say that there's nothing that's still a good, I think, a good outcome from the next 10 perspective in terms of like, hey, we know this is an important area. We want to make sure we at least understand what we should be doing, even if we don't have people to do it. And if the answer is nothing, that makes it easier for us. Okay, so maybe that's anything else we should talk about on the serverless. That it is a good question on how to get people in general. The right people is kind of the thing, because we have the direct, we have the sort of the, hey, we can tweet and get broad people, but that's not always what we want. And then there's the more direct, like I think I did reach out to TSC members who, when we have people from those companies who have serverless offerings, but they don't necessarily work in those groups. So finding the right people is not necessarily easy for them. But like it's I guess where I'm sort of randomly thinking about is like, is there something where we could build like the groups of people that we would want to pull into these kinds of discussions in general? Like, for example, the serverless, there's the Azure, the AWS, our cloud providers, right? Do we have any contacts in those groups? Not just for this discussion, but maybe more broadly.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think like if we were to like almost keep like a like an address book where
Right.
we like create our list and then we like find the point of contact, and then we ask the point of contact like, hey, like, can you add this to your list of responsibilities? Like, if you are to leave the company or change roles,
Right.
can you make sure we get handed off to the right point of contact? And then we could do like very infrequent but regular check-ins of just like, hey, it's been 4 months. Like, here is your, tri-annual check-in from Node.js. Do you have anything as a serverless cloud provider feedback you'd like to provide to the project? Or, hey, we have an event coming up. We have a session for you to participate in. And then we can use that methodology. But that will require definitely a little bit of legwork to set up, get people thing created.
But that might be worth thinking about. Oh, I got some people to promote that, like, can we build a directory? And it may just be like, companies who use Node, and maybe they use them in a number of ways, but can we get like a primary contact? And then, based on that, we would send the notifications to those primary contacts to basically say like, hey, we want to say we're having a session on this. Let's fire it off to all the companies, all the primary contacts for all the companies, and then they can figure out who are the right people to sort of loop in if they can. Okay, well, that's kind of an interesting separate topic that we might pursue. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is, and so hopefully we'll see a bunch of people tomorrow and we should say it's like 10 o'clock Eastern. There's an issue in this repo which has the Zoom information. And so, you work at a serverless provider, it'd be great to have you there, or a heavy serverless user. That would be great. So on to the next one, corporate support and contribution. So I think, Jean, you opened this one, right?
Yep, I opened this one. It was to discuss during the Collaborator Summit. I think we had quite a lot of discussion between this Collaborator Summit and the previous one. One of the core topic and main idea, like, I don't know how to like support and contribute that, because there is multiple way, but most of the way would involve a lot of work also by other people from both the foundation and people that are already contributor. So one core idea was, can we do something a bit like Gartner or any company that do that to provide, let's say, feedback and insight? Could be also linked with a security report that we do from time to time, but also maybe some news about big major update in Node.js or major core feature, and release something that could be, let's say, paid or sponsored by big company. That would be the main one of the idea, at least. And I remember we discussed with a few people when we were in Vancouver. I don't know if some of the people don't have other idea for this contributing part, sponsorship.
I'm not sure if we're gonna like figure it out just live in a meeting like this. Maybe we need like a dedicated session, which with an agenda, which is like, okay, let's just dive into this particular topic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think in that case, so it's also, I guess, depend on what's possible or not with the foundation and everyone. So I guess it would be people maybe from the next 10, people from the foundation and other people coming from the community. I don't know what would be the target of this discussion.
Yeah, I guess it's figuring out like what is the outcome that we would like to see,
Yeah.
right?
Because it could also be linked to some other part of like the to-do group that work on building OSPO for company, which would be directly linked to like one of the key part of OSPO would be how we sponsor tool and library and open source projects that we use at work. So can we also maybe, I don't know, discuss with them, maybe piggyback a bit on their finding or good practices or global ideas?
Right. So I mean, I guess one way people like companies support is by sending their people, right? And I guess I think the discussion came out of is really we want more corporate support and contribution. And then it's like, how do we encourage that, or how do we take steps to increase it? But I think it's also a hard problem, right? We haven't figured out what's the concrete thing we could do to move it forward.
I also had a quick question, and I was just checking, do we have a sponsor, let's say sponsor program on Node.js or not? What would be today if a company want to sponsor Node.js, what would be the process? Would it be through the OpenJS Foundation membership, something like that? Or can we use, because I'm just checking right now, I'm not seeing GitHub sponsor. Maybe I'm missing it, but
There's no GitHub sponsors. We do have an LFX crowdfunding account that was set up for receiving bug bounty portion security. So it's kind of, that one's kind of a security context.
Okay.
But I mean, I think that's an interesting discussion of, you know, what is it that companies can do? And certainly like joining the foundation is one of the ways that we would say, like maybe the working session, like the one outcome would be like, what are the different ways that you can, other than people, like send us your people, that's our first ask.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, then what are the other ways you can support the project, and actually writing those down, right?
Yep.
And
it would be great.
And so I guess it's like, do you want to maybe take a first cut at that list, and then we can discuss that specific list? And I think you're right that like we would want input from the foundation as well. Like, does this list make sense to them? You know, and even from companies, the things on that list, are they things that they think they could do, right? You know, and there's some interesting ones. Like, so if we had the list, we could go through that list. Like, does GitHub sponsors make any sense for us, right? Is that should we be turning all these things on or not, right? And
yeah, I'm just writing a comment on the issue to not forget to do it.
Sure.
But I can draft a quick, let's say, with a few ideas, few global, let's say, prospection and how company would do, because currently I'm implementing an OSPO for my company, and that's one of the key topics on how to simplify sponsoring project.
Right.
And what we found is, unfortunately, as developer and even manager, you don't have a full, let's say, expense capability on everything. But on the other hand, using, for example, GitHub sponsor or something that is already integrated with a billing process for a company is an easy way, even for the procurement team, to say, yeah, you can do it. It's easier than to implement a new process, for example.
Right, and so, like, if you could capture that kind of thing, like if that's your experience, your company's experience, and you could capture that in a document that says, hey, like we thought about all these different things, getting approval to become a foundation member was hard, but we could do this. That would give us a concrete thing to say, okay, well, then let's make sure we've got the different options, and let's one option that would make it easy for you.
Yes.
And then maybe we could test that against some other companies too, right?
Yeah, definitely, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I will export that, change some stuff because I cannot open source it completely right now, but
sure.
I will do that. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. In terms of the metadata proposal for docs, I think the only update is Claudio did present the updated version in the last TSC meeting. I think he's still got lots on his plate, so I'm not sure that he's got cycles to move it forward, but he did say, hey, here's all the updates based on the discussion. So it's still definitely on his list of things to work on moving forward. The current update uses TypeScript to define the types in line in the documentation after some discussion back and forth. And I think there should be an issue soon to sort of get broader feedback, right? Should be issues soon, I think, in the main repo in Node.js/Node for broader input. Any other questions on that before we move on? Okay, the next one is review the easy retros from the Collab Summit and do the updates. I think this was the older one, right? Yeah, so that's from the last one. I think, Jean, you still have a PR we need to get landed, right?
Yes, yeah, I do have a PR. I don't know if the PR is inside the issue or not. If not, I will just add it.
Okay. And we need to do the same for the current one as well.
Yes, most of them I already reviewed. So just to keep the historic, I want to learn this one first and then do maybe another one. And I'm sorry, it will be too peer to review for people, but at least we will keep the historic between the different session and stuff like that, which could be useful to not forget about some results, intermediary results, I guess.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Also, right, yeah. I'm just looking. We definitely need to get the boards, the current boards. So maybe that's, I think you opened a number of issues. So did you open one for getting the boards from the last summit into the?
Not yet. I have to do it though.
Okay. So
I started both the technical and community priorities we did in Vancouver. I didn't have time to finish, but I plan to finish it this week without I want to finish and push that.
Okay. That sounds good. Example documentation initiative. I think you were taking a look at that one too. And maybe the next two, the example documentation initiative and an I-18 initiative documentation. You might as well chat about those two.
So sorry, which one?
There's two. It's number 154.
Oh, yeah. So the example, I opened an issue in the Node.js admin repository because currently there is no one leading this initiative. Seems to me for the example one, that was something that was really important. Also linked to the documentation in some part on how do we onboard new people and people like joining the Node.js community as well, and how to use Node.js best practices, stuff like that, around specific topics. I opened a quick issue about just Will's leading this part, and if some people want to volunteer for it. And I'm also talking a bit with from time to time, but didn't have time lately, with someone I met during the Collaborator Summit to discuss about which kind of article or let's say concept and example we want, and how do we want to present that to be easily usable, not just by people that already know a lot about Node.js and can, let's say, find everything by themselves, but also by newcomer for the community.
Okay, sounds good.
So I will.
So yeah, I see you've got an issue there. I commented on it, and so that seems like a good next step in terms of getting you access to be able to help move that forward.
Oh, cool. Perfect.
Now Augustin has his hand up.
Just for your information, one of PR has been reviewed, and for each function we use, we link to the documentation. For example, we use Node.js and we link to the runner test. So yes, that's more useful for structured people and that's more clear. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I will check that because okay, I didn't check this one, but I will jump on it.
Okay. Anything on the I-18N initiative documentation?
So this one, that's a big topic. What do we want to do about this one? Following the last discussion with Claudio, but also from the TSC and stuff, do we want to continue to? So, like Matteo and some other people were saying, it's a big initiative that will take times and resources. What do we want to do? Do we consider that providing a way to have a documentation that is not only focused for, let's say, English speaker, or at least to not add this barrier of speaking English, and to translate that in other languages would be something that we want to do, or at least want to simplify for the community to do by themselves, or what would be something that we want to do linked to that?
I think the feedback we got during the discussions of so far of discussing the documentation initiative is like there's not universal agreement that it even helps. And so, you know, if there was a magic way to make it be done without any extra overhead, people would be like, yeah, let's, you know,
That would be great.
but it's not. There's a lot of work, and there's even like some people who were not native English speakers that like, unless it's done really well, it's actually harmful as well, because you go and you look at you read the doc, but it's not actually very accurate. And so their feedback was like, it's better off not being there at all. So
True.
wrapping that all together, like it's certainly not a priority for the first pass of the documentation effort.
Yeah.
Since it kind of depends maybe on that changing, my take maybe is like we shelf this until at least that's done, and then you can, you know, see if there's at that point, are there people interested in building on what was put in place there already to look at that?
Also, one point that could be interesting to have, like one of the big projects that was translated by the community and done well would be Mozilla Developer Network. I think it's almost the only big one with really consistent and great documentation on multiple languages. In that case, do we want, if we choose to have that, should it be maybe not just part of Node.js, but maybe a community, or let's say, or at least an effort done by the OpenJS Foundation? Because I guess it could also be linked to other technology part of the ecosystem.
Right. I think it might come back to like who convincing the project that it's a priority, right? Is the and back to that other discussion of like, is it adding value? You know, if we had an ask of the foundation, would it be our top ask? Or would we rather have money spent on other things, I guess would be one of the other questions too.
Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know, like, it's something like, you know, maybe I'd propose we take this off the agenda until like there's a concrete proposal of something to do. Like you know, if you think it's still something good that we should pursue. But there's a lot to line up to make it so that it would be moving forward, I think. So I don't know what you think on that front.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, no, I would agree with you. So
Okay, so I'll take it off of the agenda for now, and like, if you think about it and, you know, you come up with like, hey, here's the concrete things we should push forward, just throw it back on the agenda and we can chat.
Okay, yeah.
about it. But
All
I
good.
think in terms of like talking about it in the meetings, that's the right answer. Okay. Okay, so there's two more left. I think we can spend a good chunk of time just looking at the next 10 survey results. So I think it would be good to flip the order of the last two. So they create communication channel with the JS newsletters and periodicals. That one, I think I mentioned last time, we did reach out by hand through email to a few of the periodicals. But I think the biggest news is Ulysses has been working on a tool to take the news that's being posted to issues and put it into an RSS feed. One of the news, forget what you would call them, but the people who ran the newsletter said, hey, we often consume this stuff through RSS feeds, and so Ulysses done a lot of good work to just basically create a tool that can run, I think it would run like once a day or something and update the feed.
Yeah, it work on a cron job if we enable it, or just by manual triggering the pipeline. So yeah, there is an option also because we fetch the issues, comments, and we fetch the releases. So there is also the option to remove things and to, you know, just improve a little bit the comments and so on. So it's easier to create the content before we publish. And basically it generates a pull request, we can review it, and once it's merged, go kind of live. You know, it's just a final XML document on the main branch. So yeah, I think, yeah, we have some pending stuff regarding on if we want to do some kind of you know, a special address for it on the web or something on that direction. We want to keep it the GitHub URL working, and that's fine. I mean, I tried with some readers and was working fine, so I think it's okay. And yeah, I think last thing on that is, yeah, to transfer the repo, and yeah, and we have an issue for that. So yeah, I think it's more or less, yeah, for the first version, I think it's okay.
Yeah, no, so yeah, thanks for all the work on that. I think, you know, well, once we get the repo moved over, we can maybe even just point the three groups that I'd reached out to already and say, hey, there's now this newsreader in the files in this repo. And, you know, we can think about separately, like, do we put something like a redirect from nodejs.org or something, but hopefully they'll give us some feedback on it. And so. And I think that's the main thing on that front. I think we're still working, Jean, I think you're still reaching out to a few teams to see if they want to add their issues and for news, right?
So I added to some of them, performance being one, because I discussed with Siagis a few
Okay.
time ago. Forgot to do it. I also added for the single executable one for
Okay.
now. And like I discussed with a few people there. I will also do maybe a quick presentation of, not presentation, but like I said, take 5 minutes during the next meeting with them to just so that everyone is aware of it.
Okay, so that's good. And I guess, have they been PR'd into the?
So I added a
main
link
one?
to the issue and inside the next 10, and I need to open the PR in Node.js to add them to your list where you added yours already.
Okay, great. And then, like, I guess that list, Ulysses will add it to the list that you use for the feeder as well. So
Amazing, thanks.
okay, so I think we're making good progress on that, and then we can the feed will also make it easy to see what the news is and are we getting stuff in there and encourage people to add some more stuff, that kind of stuff. So that's good. Okay, anything else more to add on that one? Okay, if not,
just
so
maybe
go ahead.
a quick question, maybe
Yeah.
not really linked to that, would be next Collaborator Summit in 3 months. Do we have a plan to start doing something for the collaborators there? I didn't check, sorry, in the OpenJS repository. I didn't check if there is already something where some people can submit subject or stuff like that, or if it happened and when.
I don't think it's open yet, but I think it will be open soon. Claudio definitely mentioned it in the last CPC meeting. He's going to help coordinate it again. The date is set. I think it's like, I'm not going to say it because I might get it wrong, but like the date is set in September, the day before.
18, yeah.
Okay, so September 18th.
Okay, so the day before the conference.
Yeah. So yeah, right, the day before the conference, and basically the planning, I think we'll start to gear up for that relatively soon. So yeah, and hopefully we can plan to do the same kind of collaborator review of priorities and brainstorm and that kind of stuff, along with anything else that we think makes sense.
That's great.
Okay, so yeah, so now maybe we can spend some time just looking at the results from the survey. I'm going to pull up that PR for that, because I think that's the easiest way to find the file. So I do have this PR, which will, and let me just share. I think, okay. So here's the results. Let's see I think here the slides is maybe the way to start by looking at it. It's gonna work. Okay. So maybe we'll just scroll. Do people think this makes sense? We can scroll through some of the slides and just have a discussion. And at the end, the goal is to figure out, what next actions or follow-ons we should do from the survey results. That makes sense to people? Okay, there now I can see. So first one is which regards in terms of role. So if we look at the role, we got lots of application developers, backend server authors, library package authors.
I think you are sharing your GitHub page.
Ah, right. Okay.
I don't know if you are showing something else, but yeah.
That better.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it makes okay. If you weren't seeing that, it makes a lot more sense. So yeah, so we've got lots of application developers, backend authors, library package authors, number of direct end users. But it seems like we had a fairly good, good coverage of who. No huge surprise there, I don't think, right? In terms of length of use, so I think a fairly good spread of usage.
And yeah, for the youth, it's great also to see that we still have a lot of people under 1 year. So a lot of people are still interested in using Node.js, and it's not. So that's a great indicator for this one.
Yeah, and also people who've been using it sustained over a number of years, which is interesting. This one I thought was really interesting in that, in terms of the respondents, we ended up getting a lot of North America was only 10% or 11%.
Yes.
So we got a lot of response in Europe, good response in Asia. So I was
really surprised to not have North America to be the first one, or at least the second one.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what if in terms of our marketing of it or what, but that I think is an interesting thing. And I don't know what we do with that in terms of a one-off, but it's an interesting one to see if we do another survey, does that maintain or not or whatever. So what type of organization do people work at? So lots of technology companies, startups. I guess the question here to think about for the next time, would there be any other breakdown that might be interesting of technology versus just, because technology is a pretty big bucket. And that was obviously our biggest one. So I don't know if we could break that down at all the next time. It might be interesting.
I think we could split it in remove or change technology company by big corporation or something like that, and then have a subcategory. Or are you working in healthcare, insurance, banking, or stuff like that?
Yeah, that might be interesting. Is it banking, insurance? Is it industrial or whatever, that kind of stuff? Primary use case. So I don't think this is a huge, no real surprise here, but we had good representation from both the back end, the front end, and also those who basically are working on both. So I think that's good. In terms of the package managers, we could see that, I think probably as expected, NPM is the most widely used one. I think a bunch of this other, we managed to, I didn't catch that the initial one, we missed NPM in the list. So we added it in fairly quickly, and that's why it's here. But like a bunch of this, you'll see in the write-in, a lot of the others were NPM as well. So, but 20% and 15% is still a non-trivial group of people who are using other things too. So it's good to understand that. Similarly, on version managers, it seemed to be very much NVM is the most widely used one.
But I'm also a bit surprised this one for the other. Like, did we miss a big one? I don't remember for the result of the survey, but
yeah,
is it
we
still
can
just
look at.
wording?
So here's, if we want to flip over to that, I can open that one.
Can we see again the results?
So I'm just flipping over to this, okay, sort of view files. So this was the results, and we can actually go over and just take a quick look at what that other was. So this one, pages. So ASDF was mentioned a lot.
Oh,
So those, I guess, FNM.
Mhm.
Actually, that was probably mentioned even more than the other one, but you can see.
Yeah, FNM is a popular NVM replacement these days. It's someone at Vercel maintains it, and it's becoming super popular. It's like the go-to node version management tool.
So that's kind of, yeah, if we look there, probably it was the most mentioned.
And
But,
we're assuming ASDF is people just filling in the text box with jargon.
I think ASDF actually exists.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah. So ASDF, AS.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there is something called ASDF-Node.js.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm sure I did the same thing. And like, no, but because when that many people put it in, I don't think it was just random. But yeah, so here it is. It's a thing, and people are using it. And so I think those are two interesting ones to say, okay, yeah, we are at least aware of them now, and that amounted to. So there's a bunch of here which don't really amount to. Like none was also quite a specific answer. And there was a few PNPM write-ins. I guess I don't know if that was like a confusion, or like, does PNPN give you node version management as well? I guess you can use, in some cases, the package managers to install Node. But I'm not so sure about though. So, but yeah, that was an interesting bit of information there. Anything more on that one before we move on? The operating system one, I think this is quite interesting. I expected actually Windows and Mac OS to be more common than it is. I suspect that Docker, Linux. I don't know if people were like, hey, I'm using Docker containers on one of the other platforms or whatever, but it was interesting to me because it says like, yeah, no, okay, we shouldn't just consider that the development environments is Windows and Mac. Linux is actually a very popular one as well. Production, this matched my expectations that most people deliver their production environments in Linux. So Linux and Unix. So that's where node applications are actually running mostly, still 10% on Windows, 15%, and a few on Mac. Of course, as expected, almost, largest percentage is x86, although ARM we can see is 20%. And, I think that this actually is not a surprise to me, like not too many 32-bit, so mostly 64-bit on x86, and ARM sort of an increasing importance makes sense to me as well. And then others, it's good to see like some of the other platforms that we're involved with. Where do you get your Node executables? So, the version with the Node version manager. So we'd ask that question. So lots of people get them with the version manager. I think this is using the official images, like the Docker images. Using package managers, doing things like system package managers, downloading the binaries, building. So that is an interesting as well, good information to have in terms of like the Node version managers are an important way of getting I think this might be using the official installers. So basically
Yep, the second one is going to the Node.js website and click download, I think.
I think that might be this one, downloading the binaries. Here, we should
Maybe.
We'd have to go back to the questions, but let's actually do that just a sec. So surveys, I think we landed that.
I think it should be in the pull request also, yeah. Or here.
All right.
I think you passed it. I saw it here, yeah.
Right. So yeah, the second one's using an official installer. So we have installers for Windows and Mac, so it's using those. And then downloading the binaries, yeah. So again, that's good to know, like, 70% use one of those package managers, version managers. So important. Then if we look at the technical priorities, it seems like in terms of the other, there seem to be like, I would take this as we've got a pretty good representation of the technical priorities in what we've captured for the project, because there wasn't the other wasn't like a 90%, it's a small percent, which is good. We can look at what that was. So there was, okay, here, a fairly small write-in of technical priorities. So this one is like, hey, I'd like to know what's more of what's coming up. Bundling, embedding, and bundling the runtime.
But for next time, we do the same. I'm wondering if by providing answer to people already, don't we like guide them to check the answer and not to write some text?
Well, yeah, we might, but it's also, we want to know if they agree with what.
Yes, true.
We've got, so it's, yeah, I don't know how to maybe we could ask two different questions. So here, so I think these are interesting to read through. So it's like image size, start execution time, but I think at least we've got a fairly good confirmation for the things that we've identified, and still like modern HTTP shows right up near the top. So, and then support for features. So let's see, where is that? looking for like support for features from the latest ECMAScript spec. So keeping up to date is obviously still like one of the top things. Documentation. This one I find kind of interesting, like better multi-threaded support. It's also interesting in that it's mentioned in a number of other places is that threading and being able to use extra threads was mentioned more often than I would have guessed, to be honest. And so I don't know, any other thoughts on that one before we sort of move to the next slide? So then we got into some of the questions specific around ESM. So obviously quite a lot of people are considering using ESM, somewhere in 65%. Again, similarly, a number of people planning to convert an application over as well. I think that's the end of the sort of non-write-in type questions. And now I'm trying to, did we get, I just think, I feel like we're missing some slides here. Why is so well, okay, we can figure out if we're missing something or not there, but like the technical priorities. Okay, this is the other. So no, I guess that's a follow-on to the which of the technical priorities are important to you. These are the other. So this is actually, I think, quite an interesting list in terms of what people wrote in terms of being important to them. So, you know, TypeScript shows up there. Performance is obviously a big one. Again, like HTTP3 was mentioned a number of times. Backwards compatibility. So I think this is an interesting set for people to read through as well, and to sort of see if is there anything really missing in our initiatives that should be called out here. I mean, things like performance is like, that was mentioned enough that it's certainly important. So.
Yep.
And then in terms of the open-ended questions in terms of ESM, so people are moving over, we asked like open-ended, what are your problems? I guess, you know, dir name and file name were mentioned a fair amount. I think the other thing I read through there a lot was just the existing code base makes it hard to move over. There's lots of modules out there, and because of that, it's
and there is also, I think, a bit linked to that would be for library maintainer to the need to ship 2 different versions of the same code base.
Yeah. So yeah, I think like interop definitely kind of like. So again, I think this is one where it'd be worthwhile. Maybe it's even like we need to make sure that the team, the people who've been working on ESM, you know, that they're aware of this information, because it provides some good feedback, I think, for sure. Okay, why is this not? It's the next slide. So some good information in there. Go through. I don't think we have time to go through this in detail, but number of interesting things there. some not so positive things, but and then the last one, is it going to actually go there for us? No, I don't know why it's not loading, but here, let me just download that. Gonna download this, download. That did not do the right thing, did it? Okay, maybe there's a download here. No. Just trying to find where's the okay download. Here we go. Okay. There. So basically, if you can see, there's lots of pages in terms of ESM. And so I think there's definitely, it's interesting to go through and look at all the things that were mentioned and see if there's anything, you know, that's new news in terms of challenges or things that we weren't aware of before. Then the last question was around, do you have any recurring issues? So we asked for problems, so we got a whole bunch of problems. So I don't think this is a bad thing. It's actually quite a good thing to have that many people sort of write in answers. So, you know, again, something I think worth going through and looking to see if there's any sort of like, what is it that we could pull out of this in terms of like, is there something the project could do in terms of helping to address some of these? Again, performance shows up there. More often than I thought, the things related to threading again. You know, TypeScript and types are mentioned. The whole issue of you need 1 million packages to develop something, you know, the deep dependency trees. But I think, again, some really good comments and data. And so it's something we should each go through and kind of understand if there's some specific initiatives that we can sort of pull out of that. So what I'd say is I'm going to leave the survey on our agenda for maybe at least one more meeting. And if people can sort of read through the more detailed data and we can kind of discuss, is there anything that stuck out for people in terms of like initiatives we should try on or try and work on. But I think it was quite a successful survey, and thanks to Kaylee and the foundation staff for helping us to run that. I think it went quite well and we got some really interesting info. So I think that takes us to the end of what was on our agenda. Is there anything else we should discuss before closing out this week? Okay, well, thanks for everybody's time, and we will see you in GitHub and next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.